Hey folks, welcome back to Only Best Fancy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about The God Is Not Willing, the first book of the Witness trilogy by Stephen Erikson. And this is a reread for me because it's been roughly 4 years since this book came out, and I'm very excited for the second one, which should be out. I think it's already out actually, by the time that I'm posting this video. So, what is this book about? It actually follows like multiple story threads, as they always do. The first major one, we get the story of Rand, who is a child of some of the more unfortunate events of an early book in the Malzahn Book of the Fallen series, and he said after a very depressing, triggering event, he sets out on a journey to find his people, because he is a half blood. The next story you follow is a particular detachment of the Malazan Marines, who are they've been decimated by battle after battle, and in order to shore up their numbers, a mercenary squad is recruited to travel with them, and they set out. They're dispatched to a town that was previously the scene of a key incident in this particular area of the world's history. But when they get there, they find that things are quite a bit more complicated than they initially assumed. And then on the other side of the fence, when climate change finally arrives to this continent, and a significant triggering event is about to happen that will just result in massive ecological devastation. It triggers a migration of multiple multiple peoples on who reside in this area, and unfortunately, there's only one direction that they can head in, and that direction is going to put them on a warpath with the Malazan Marines. So, a pretty complex novel for multiple reasons. Like, this book just has a lot, like every single Malazan book, this book just has a lot going on, and it's going to be really fun to unpack all of it. I'm not even qualified to unpack all of it. There's just so much going on. Like, this is technically the first of a new trilogy, focused on Castle Orlog, but I effectively consider it a sequel to Malzahn Book of the Fallen because of some of the things that we see in here, and some of the yeah, in terms of timeline and all of that, it is effectively a sequel to Malzahn Book of the Fallen. So anyway, the first character I want to talk about is Rand, who is he's a very depressing character to read about. He is the child of a particular event, we can say, when Karsa visited. He's the son of Karsa Orlan to start with, and if you know the warpath the Karsa was on, you understand exactly how Rand came about, and and this story is all about him effectively losing his innocence, because he is a child. He is very much a child. He's like early teens at the point that this story is happening. I think 15 or so. And this story is all about him losing his innocence and being forced to grow up in pretty much one of the most horrific ways possible. And not just being forced to grow up, but then being forced to flee for his life, essentially. And that's a journey that sets him on a path to discover his people, discover his heritage, and more importantly, discover who he is. And his story is interesting, setting aside the absolute horror of it. His story is interesting because of the choices that he makes. He is a case of I know, like, the whole argument for nature versus nurture. He is one of those cases that really makes you question what people say when it comes to that particular argument. When we see the type of person that he evolves into by the end of this book, he's just a fascinating story to read, and his is a fascinating story to read, I should say. And by the end of the book, like, you can't help but just be interested to see what happens next with him, because not just because of the stage that is set for him, but also because of the character that he displays, like the in terms of like his moral compass and these kind of things. It's going to be very interesting to see the road that he set out on. So there's that. The the other major the other major section of the book that was fun to read is of course the Malazan Marines. Like we get as usual a whole new swath of characters in here, along with some familiar faces. And there's one thing you can say about the Malazan Marines is that they have character. They are characters one and all. Like these guys, they're built different. Not necessarily correctly, but they're built different. Is the only way to put it sometimes. And as usual, Steven Erikson, he just goes wild with how he portrays these soldiers in terms of their camaraderie, the bonds that they form, the way they operate, their dialogue, their interactions. You will never get tired of reading about the Malazan Marines, and this book is just a standard example of why. Like, yeah, I'll leave it at that. It's just a joy to read about these guys. They can be doing anything whatsoever. It's just a joy to read about these guys. Given how dark this book can get and some of the more complicated themes that it deals with and all of that, like, of course their section was just rammed back with a whole ton of humor, even as you have to take a step back and look at exactly what these guys are doing and reset and understand that in a real world scenario they would not be the good guys. They may do honorable things, but it's because they often rise to the occasion where it comes to their individual honor, and not necessarily because the objective that they were set to is honorable in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, like, I'll just leave it at that. And in their particular section, we get quite a bit of lore drop on some of the characters who we knew from Malazan Book of the Fallen. Some of their stories we may remember, some of them we may not remember. It does have some minor spoilers here and there for what happens with certain characters. So this is definitely not a book to read as your introduction to Malazan. But yeah, it's just pretty standard when it comes to them. And through their story, we just, as is typical with these kind of stories, we deal with we just deal with the typical concepts of how you approach conflict and and what it means to be of service and these kind of things, and how you approach war, and the brotherhood and camaraderie and all that stuff is just kind of baked in here. But there's also the way that they deal with the conflict in this story, the way that they the choices that they make on an individual level and as a unit. So yeah, there's quite a bit that can be unpacked there, but why have all the fun in this video? And then the final story that we follow are people who are essentially fleeing the coming disaster. Two different sets of people you can see, and the approaches that they take to flee the coming disaster is pretty interesting. You have effectively two sides of the same coin. They do have similar approaches, and they do appear initially as on the other side of the fence as like the same threat, but the way that they approach it and the way that the response that they receive in exchange is just so different. And there's quite a bit when you read how Erikson handles that particular aspect of the conflict. It really sets you thinking. It really sets you thinking about the things like the necessity of war, and why certain things have to be the way they are, especially in our real world. When like these are very, this could almost be analogous to very similar situations that happen that we're all very familiar with, that we watch, and we just have to like, this is very much a book that will make you stop and think when it comes to certain to what certain sections of the population on the world stage go through. If you really dwell on it, I mean, that's probably just going to depress you. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Um, And of course, this being a Malazan book, there's all sorts of portents and dire warnings and epic stuff in the making. Like, all sorts of magical forces are making their moves and setting the stage for different things. And on top of that, we have the star of the show who doesn't even appear in this book, because this is meant to be a trilogy about Carso Orlong. And the way that Erikson is approaching this story is just absolutely, like, I already like Karsa as a character, but the way that Erikson is handling him in this book, it reminds me very much of how Disney has been using Darth Vader lately. Is all I'm going to say. Like, Erikson is using Karsa in these books in the best possible way. Well, in this one at least. So I'm very excited to get to know Life Forsaken and see what goes down in that book. So yeah, honestly, I think I'll just leave it here, because that's pretty much all I have to say about this book. Like, if I were to sit and just try and unpack all the concepts and the ideas and the themes that Erikson plays with in here, like, things like the response to natural disaster, the response to refugees and these kind of things, like the response to civilians who flee a war-torn environment. It can get very. This video can get very dragged out and it can get very political. So let's just leave it here for now and say that this is just a bang of a book, as only Erikson can write it. And it just does everything equally well. Like, you just have these amazing characters. You have a complex story that begins to unfold here, that just has these incredible highs and lows, and of course you have just some deep ideas and concepts to dwell that will absolutely get you thinking, even as you enjoy the as my friend from Joseph Reed's book says, the more unga bunga aspect of it, where you just want to read about people beating up on people fighting on the people and that sorts of stuff. So yeah, yeah, a banger of a book. It needs not be said. And if you're a fan of Malazan Book of the Fallen, there's absolutely no reason for you to not read this book. But it definitely should be read after Malazan Book of the Fallen, I think. But yeah, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.